solutions. Next up, we're going to explore digital identity solutions for KYC and NFTs. We all know that the future of decentralized identity management has got some peculiar idiosyncrasies and particular challenges, and it requires exploring across those uncharted territories. Now, we know the heads of different projects have been kind enough to come and join us today to make sure that we get to unpick this conversation a little further. In our next panel, we are so pleased to be joined by Tim Heidfeld from IAMX, Patrick Tobler from NMKR, Bruno Kellenberger from KYC Spider AG, Sebastian Bode from Cardano Foundation, and it is chaired by the moderator, Allison Fromm from Proofspace. Let's hear it for our panelists, everyone.
Thank you for your support.
Hello, welcome to our panel and discussion on decentralized identity, KYC, NFTs. I am Allison Fromm, Chief Commercial Officer at Proofspace. We make it easy for companies of any size, any stage to get started enjoying the benefits of decentralized identity and verifiable credentials. We're going to talk all about what those words mean, but first I'd like the panel to introduce themselves briefly. Tim, let's start with you.
Yes, good morning. My name is Tim. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called IAMX. We have a digital identity solution that makes it possible that you basically purchase all products in one-click fulfillment. Before this time, my main job was to found a company and then to sell it. So I sold the last one to the biggest TV broadcasting station in Europe, ProSieben Sat.1, and before this to T-Online Deutsche Telekom AG.
Sebastian. Thank you, Tim.
So hi, Cardano community. I'm Sebastian, Director of Engineering of Cardano Foundation. This pretty much means that I lead a couple of software development teams at Cardano Foundation and also work together with my colleague Gita Fasciola for the technical integrations. I have a background as a software developer, so starting off in computer games industry and then venturing the typical German way into engineering, aeronautics, automotive, finance, and finally ended up here, so leading my team. Was very looking forward to meeting the community, and so far it has been great.
Thanks, Sebastian. Bruno.
My name is Bruno. I'm the CEO and the shareholder of KYC Spider. I'm actually representing rather the traditional industry. As in the blockchain context, we kind of play the oracle to the world of KYC data. Pleasure being here and welcome to all of you.
Thanks, Bruno. Patrick.
Yeah, I'm Patrick. I'm very happy to be here. I'm the founder of NMKR, and the goal for NMKR is really to onboard the real world. So we're very much focused on just creating tools so that other people can build amazing Web3 products and, you know, onboard the next million users to Cardano.
Great, thanks. Really excited to talk with all of you more about digital identity. Before we get into the conversations with the panel, I want to give a brief introduction to the terms we'll be using. And let's start by talking about what are the problems that we have with digital identity today in the Web 2.0 world. So probably all of you are familiar with the hassles that we face when we go online. We need an account with a company like Google or Facebook or LinkedIn to even exist. When we log in with that account, we give them all of our data. We lose control over our personal information and we give up our privacy. And you're probably all familiar with having to manage tens, hundreds, soon it'll be thousands of passwords to manage your identity online. For companies, they have inefficient processes to ask customers for the same information over and over again, which leads to really bad user experience and lots of frustration. And companies spend tens, thousands, millions of dollars protecting data, which in many cases, leaving aside companies like Facebook and Google, many companies don't want all this personal data, but they're stuck with it, and they have to spend millions of dollars to protect it. So what's the solution? So cryptography gives us an amazing alternative to this model of digital identity that I just described. With algorithms, people can create a decentralized identifier. So we're changing the model entirely. Instead of having an account where you log into a platform like Google, you create your own decentralized identifier locally using your own device like a phone that becomes your cryptographic fingerprint. You create it, you control it, nobody else even needs to know it unless you decide to share it with them. And then any company, any educational institution, any friend can issue what's called a verifiable credential, which is some sort of data that gets issued directly to your decentralized identifier. And the holder of that verifiable digital credential holds it in their own wallet. So they, as the user, control it, they decide when to share it, and they can reuse it. And this opens up an amazing amount of use cases, many of which our panel are going to talk about in just a moment. What does this have to do with blockchain? Here we are at the Cardano Summit. So it's really important when we talk about privacy that to differentiate between what data goes on chain and what doesn't. So the data within a verifiable credential, your personal attributes, they don't go on chain. Your decentralized identifier, it is exactly that. It is decentralized, it's local, it's your personal identifier. So what do we use the blockchain for? The issuer of a credential, whether it's an educational institution, whether it's a national government, whether it's your local gym, they publish their own decentralized identifier to a public record like a blockchain so that their credential issuance can be verified. Second, the data, the personal data within a verifiable credential is put into a hash, which is a fancy word for a kind of cryptographic process, and that hash is stored on a blockchain like Cardano that makes it possible for a verifier to know that the data presented in that credential has not been tampered with and was issued by a particular issuer. And then finally, Patrick is going to talk more about NFTs, but let's quickly differentiate between an NFT and a verifiable credential. An NFT lives on the blockchain, and its amazing value and potential comes from the fact that it's transferable. A verifiable credential lives in your wallet and is issued directly to a particular decentralized identifier, so it gets its power from not being able to be transferred. It's issued to you, but it can be reused. So with that as a quick background, we're going to start diving into some of the fantastic use cases that take advantage of this technology. So let's start by talking about the important need for standardization and interoperability that makes this whole industry able to work together across lots of different platforms and use cases. So for that, I'm going to turn it over to Sebastian to talk about standardization and interoperability.
Very cool. So DIDs, SSI overall, that's a typical, just from a pure technical point of view, it's a typical interoperability topic, because if one ecosystem starts to build SSI systems in one way and the other does it in another way, and both cannot cooperate with each other or work with each other, then usually you cannot make much use of it. Back in 2010, when I was working in automotive industry, actually, I was involved in the standardization for car-to-car communication. And this was almost the same challenge that we faced there. A lot of manufacturers all around the world were trying to align on a common standard for how cars and infrastructure units exchange messages with each other, and that was only the lowest layer. So it's super important that we find a way how to align on common standards, and there are a couple of existing committees or groups and organizations that take on this task. One of them is probably most important, the W3C, who specified the DID methods, but also for verifiable credentials. There are other standardization groups out there that define their own standards or define so-called standard profiles. So they pick from a couple of existing standards and then make this their standards profile so that you have kind of a guideline which you can use when you implement such a system. There's an interesting model from the Trust over IP Alliance, which is under the umbrella of the Linux Foundation, and they divide up the whole stack of SSI into multiple layers, but not only multiple layers, but into two kind of streams. One is for the technical interoperability, and the other one is for the governance. And they mention on their website that both are super important, and you're not allowed to if you just implement one of them, it's not sufficient. So you have to have the governance part in place, and you have to have the technological side of things in place. There's one thing that's especially important, because when all those standardization committees are working together, defining the standards, writing documents, and then hand it over to the implementers probably, trying to build systems on SSI, for example on Cardano, important thing is that there's also validation for those standards. Because it could easily happen that there are certain players in those committees that influence, probably bias, how a standard is written, and then in the end, a standard is published, which can only be implemented by one of the involved parties. So it's very important to do small experiments, do something called a plug test or a test fest, where those standards get validated, so that you got that feedback loop. That's something that will become, hopefully, more important during the next years. Within the Cardano ecosystem, we're super happy that there are already some strong players around. So we got IAMX, we got Attila Prism, who implement, for example, like IAMX, official W3C DID methods. I talked to Tony Rose from Attila Prism that during the next releases, Attila will also be fully standards compliant, which is super important, for the Cardano ecosystem as well. There's one thing that's also, besides the standard, super important, and that's usability. Because Web3, DID, SSI can be super cumbersome for users if the usability or user experience issue hasn't been solved. So you need a proper, let's call it an identity wallet. And there are also, besides, for example, Lace, which targets to be the front end for Attila Prism, there are some great other projects out there. We are, for example, cooperating with the guys from RootsID, which is an open source project from the community, who built one of the first identity wallets for Attila. So this is another important thing, and especially something that's important for Cardano Foundation, because that's like our perfect role, to bring people together, contribute to the standardization committees. That's probably the last thing to say, that not only Cardano Foundation takes care of the standardization of a Cardano standard, but that we are contributing also to those, together to those other standardization committees, so that Cardano influences and aligns with other ecosystems out there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sebastian. That's really helpful to set the big global picture for how this industry operates. And now we can dive down a little bit further into a particular use case, because I think there's a lot of excellent ways to use decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, which make up this SSI, self-sovereign identity industry in the field of KYC and KYB. So who's keeping track of all of those acronyms? Bruno, as our KYC expert, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, actually, KYC is quite a broad field, so there is not on or off. You have KYC on potentially 20 flavors, and actually depends heavily the use case. So KYC for to open a bank account is different than if you just want to buy a bottle of whiskey in an online shop, where age verification is the topic. And that's actually where we are coming from. So we do have collected almost 30 million of KYC records in the traditional industry. And actually now we want to make that available also in the Web3 context to basically to bring it back to the user control, who sees what. And KYC as such consists of pieces like identification. Even in identification, you have different flavors, because for some businesses or use cases, just a simple copy of a driver's license would be sufficient, where for other use cases you need to have a full-blown video identification with security measures proof and liveness checks and so on and so forth. So there is a big field already in the pure identification. If you go further, actually you want also to prove that a person or a company you're doing business with is not sanctioned, or is not politically exposed. So you need to match that with the respective lists. And unfortunately, there is not a single big list available in the market, but almost every government, but also supranational organizations are issuing those type of information. And actually, we try to make that available in that context. Furthermore, in KYC, you have also different attributes. You might even be forced to collect data where the money is coming from, source of fund, source of wealth, if you have a certain amount to invest. And actually, you need to document all of that. In the traditional industry, this documentation, sometimes you need to keep it for 10 years, which actually in a decentralized world is not really where you want to go. And here we do believe we can bridge that, being this compliance oracle for Web3, we can bridge that, and together with IAMX, we can make that available really to all users finally.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's a really interesting combination of using decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials in the KYC field and bridging the legacy regulatory compliant environment with the Web3 world. So let's shift gears to talk about another great use case for self-sovereign identity, DIDs, VCs. Patrick, do you want to talk about how NFTs are taking advantage of this technology?
Yeah, yeah. So you know, I'm very much about actually building stuff and actually getting user adoption, because all these amazing standards and all this stuff in theory sounds really good, but you know, we actually have to bring it to the users and actually, you know, solve real problems with it. So one of the biggest problems that we see in the NFT space right now is that we have this very centralized control over verification of projects. So for example, if I have a celebrity who wants to launch an NFT project on Cardano, let's imagine Paris Hilton, my favorite example. If she wants to launch an NFT project on Cardano, how do we actually know that Paris Hilton is really creating this NFT project? We're probably going to her website or her Twitter account or her Instagram account, and we trust those sources. We trust her Twitter account to be legit. And if she posts about the NFT project there, we think, okay, you know, I think this is the legit Twitter account. It's probably really her project. So, but that's a very old school way of doing things. And basically, it's very bad user experience, because then I would have to go through her Twitter account each time, check on Cardano the policy ID, see, okay, does this match the actual NFT collection on JPEG Store or on OpenSea or whatever, and then verify it through that. So what happens is that we have all these big marketplaces in the space, like JPEG Store, OpenSea, Magic Eden on Solana, and so on, that are now wanting to give their users better user experience. So basically, they take this verification process into their own hands, and they say, okay, look, you know, we're gonna check if this NFT project is legit. We're gonna create a database, essentially, a centralized database with all the verified projects, and then we're gonna display a little check mark next to the project name on the store. And I don't think that's the way to go. I think that's very centralized. I think that's making things very also difficult for new competitors to come into the space. And yeah, and that's really something we shouldn't aim for in a decentralized space. So basically, what we've tried to do together with IAMX is we created a standard to allow creators to verify themselves. So creators can go ahead and say, okay, look, I have all these different data points, like my Twitter account, my social accounts, but also KYC maybe, and also other stuff that I want to connect to this collection on-chain, so that people can actually see, okay, these different data points are really connected to this collection, and they can verify it themselves. So what we did is we wrote a CIP for this, so a standard Cardano improvement proposal, and then we actually built the very first you know, on-chain digital identity solution, as far as I know. And we, you know, users can now go to NMKR, and then they will be able to very easily link their own NFT projects directly to their social accounts. And then in the metadata of the policy, basically of the royalty token, or as we call it, the collection token, which is one specific dedicated token on the Cardano chain, you can now check, okay, which digital identity is connected to this NFT collection. And then marketplaces like JPEG Store and so on can actually just display, you know, Twitter account with a little check mark and so on. And then the users have the ability to verify themselves if they want to trust this collection or not.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Patrick. So KYC, NFT, two fantastic use cases for decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, which make up this self-sovereign identity industry. What we're finding at Proofspace is that pretty much anybody who's online, which these days is everybody, any business, any organization, any school, can benefit from some aspect of self-sovereign identity, decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials. So perhaps, Tim, you could talk about some other use cases that you're seeing that make particularly good use of this technology.
Yes, thank you. So the second product that we have live is called verifiable pools. This means that when you run a pool, you are the validator of the node in proof of stake. So what we do is that we add compliance there. Compliance on a level that is higher than legally needed. And we do this with our partner KYC Spider. So how does this work? This means that when you run a pool on Cardano, then you do a know your business or a know your customer check. And we make this verification reusable, and you that run the node, you own this. And then you can add this in the so-called extended metadata to your pool, so you have a so-called verifiable imprint. So we do this to add compliance to proof of stake, and also we are planning to do this with the delegators. We do this with the reason because we think that if we add compliance more than needed, this will bring money in the ecosystem and flood the pools. The most breathtaking business case for me is to use this concept of technology in Web 2. And we have delivered a proof of concept that this works already in November 2021 with a German telecommunication provider. I know that all of the audience sitting here and also all of the watchers around the world, that you have a smartphone and that you have a mobile plan. And if you remember the signing up process for this, you probably spent 5 minutes in filling out the application form, putting in your name like you have done it so often before. And then there are certain products, like also a mobile plan, where you need to do a KYC, what takes usually about 5 to 8 minutes. So our technology makes it possible that those 13 minutes are reduced to 1 second. Therefore, we say our technology makes it possible that you do legally binding actions in one-click fulfillment. And the cool thing about those DIDs, although it might be a little bit hard to understand, I always say, for me, it's like a simple Minecraft building block. So it works on any software. It's technology neutral. It works on any ledger. It works on any website and on any app. Simple things maybe that you should take away with you besides the technology stuff. I'm talking about the benefits of the stakeholders for a moment. So benefit of you as a natural person using this technology means benefit number one, you save time. So usually we spend an average of 400 days in our life to fill in forms, to interact with whoever. So this is basically reduced to 1 second, so you save time. If you take this model to Web 2, you can purchase any product online within 1 second, so you also save time there, and you get a discount on every product that you purchase of about 15%, so you save money. And I know that you are also familiar with this, but when you purchase something online and you have a company involved that makes it possible that this product is purchased, you get a sales commission, right? You know this, those are transaction-based revenues. And the benefit number 3 is besides saving money, that you make money. How does this work? We provide a cashback. This means on every purchase that you do online, you save time, you save money, and you make money. Why is this important? If you open your iPhone or your whatever manufacturer you have today, you probably have more than 50 or 60 apps on your phone. So you really need a good argument why you should also put the next app on your phone. Benefit regarding for example, KYC, Spider, is that we share a certain percentage of this revenue stream lifetime with the partner who has done the onboarding. So you have a financial motivation. And this is also very important for our telecommunication partners. Telecommunication partners are our source for customer mass onboarding, because telcos are worldwide, they are in every country, they have at least 10 million customers, but they only have an average net result contribution per customer per head of only $6. So our technology also provides them with a solution that they financially participate forever in the lifetime revenue stream, and on a conservative base, we contribute €3 net result contribution per year. If you have an e-commerce shop, the great benefit that you have is that you increase the conversion rate. Conversion rate means how many visits do you need to do one sale. So why is this important? Because traffic costs. So the average cost per visitor, if you look at Google, long tail generic keywords, is €1.50. So our technology increases the conversion rate from 2 to 5%. This means you need 50 visits before, then only 20. You save 30 times €45. So this is really a lot. So your return on marketing investment rises, or with the same marketing investment, you have 2.5 times more visits. And if your business also needs a KYC, the technology that you own, because you own your data, you own the Know Your Customer process that you have done, it's also a benefit for the shops because they save money. They do not need to pay the 10 or 20 US dollar again. Maybe one last thing to add is we also work with biometrics, what is usually considered as something critical, because if it would be central, if it would be in the wrong hands, you can of course do very bad things with this. From a mathematical point of view, maybe we can look at this topic for a moment. Your iris, your face and your fingerprints still and rolled with the liveness detection, they are unique. So they are unique identifiers. And we chain them to an even bigger and more secure unique identifier. So with you using this system of digital identity, this means that you always have super admin C rights. So if something could happen, should happen, that we maybe can not all foresee today, you will not lose your eyes and your head and your fingers, because then you're probably dead. But what we have implemented there is that you can always overrule the system because you own your digital identity and you can re-access this with your biometrics. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So we're going to transition into some more general questions. Unfortunately, we can't take any questions from the audience, but all of us will be around if you want to follow up on anything after the panel. But Tim, I want to hit on something you said that was really compelling. We all have too many apps on our phones. What does it take for somebody to download one more app? So I want to talk about the process of adoption, because this technology is powerful, but how do we get started? How do we get that flywheel going to build these ecosystems that really will benefit the user in terms of realizing the power of decentralized identity? So Sebastian, I'm gonna pick on you first. From your seat in the Cardano Foundation, what do you see are the important factors that we need to get this technology adopted and to start being used by the community?
Yeah, so actually I don't try to be the party crasher, but there are so many things that you can do wrong when implementing an SSI system.
Yeah.
You can do it in a decentralized way, which would be good, but you can also do it easily in a centralized way without probably not noticing it. So that's important to take thoroughly care of, that it has been implemented in a decentralized way. Then it's about the data. Where does the data stay? Is it in the wallet of the user? Is it published to some custodial service? It's super easy to do actually GDPR infringements if you're implementing a DID system, so you need to take care of this. Yeah, so I guess the most important thing is trust, that we manage to demonstrate that those systems are trustworthy. Of course, that they are of use and not make people's life more cumbersome when it comes to consuming those kind of systems, and probably also to always leave the possibility to opt out, probably not from the IDs themselves, but for example from KYC, so that I can use a non-KYC'd DID at any time if there's just a use case that doesn't need me to relate any personal feature to a DID.
Yeah, those are great points. Great points, thank you. And you mentioned KYC, so Bruno, to come back to you, I'm interested to hear, so in the blockchain and crypto industry, we all have this challenge, and it's never been more apparent than it is right now, with how do you comply with the legacy regulatory system that we have to work in, and protect and maintain the benefits of decentralization that makes crypto so special and unique and revolutionary. And so sitting in the KYC industry, how do you see decentralized identity and verifiable credentials helping to bridge that gap?
I mean, actually, even myself as a user, I would highly appreciate to control my data on my own. So it's that conviction that it has to go in that direction. And we actually came into this partnership as well by a strategic view, how does compliance look in 10 years? And we do definitely believe that this trend has to go in that direction. However, now the transformation from very regulated businesses, centrally stored, kept for 10 years plus, into a decentralized, zero-knowledge proof way where you only have a need-to-know principle underneath, so you don't share anything which is not needed for the business case. Actually, that will take time because we all know that, for instance, banks are rather slow followers than early movers. So to me, the real use cases, and that's key that we bring them down to earth, they are potentially not in the high regulated area. They are rather in the potentially less or not regulated area where trust is important. So from that perspective, I see the use cases in the e-commerce, in the telco space, very interesting. And the first step for let's say a heavy regulated organization who sits on a lot of this data, they actually could issue those identities into such a system. So at least that if I have to identify myself for the 21st time, because I did already 20, that I don't need to do it the 22nd, so I can leverage at least my identification I have done for another bank or for another crypto exchange for further use cases. So I think that's the first step, how we can bring the heavy regulated industry into that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So thinking about NFTs, Patrick, you're obviously really well known in the NFT space, and congratulations, by the way, on your award last night.
Thank you.
What are you hearing from the NFT community as you start to talk about using decentralized identifiers?
Yeah, I see a lot of appreciation for it. I think everyone is in favor of building decentralized systems. I mean, crypto is all about giving power back to the users instead of centralizing it with some big corporations or companies. So the overall movement to decentralized identifiers is extremely appreciated, but we are at the first, steps there. So we have to really now get this out there even more and actually adopt it. So all the marketplaces need to implement it. All the minting tools need to implement it. The CIP that we propose, we need to work on it. Maybe figure out are there even better ways to do it. Stuff like that. And and I think we are really in a position to make Cardano, say, very unique, because this solution, of course, it exists on other chains as well. But the reality is no one is really implementing it on Solana or Ethereum. And I feel like, the Cardano space is a very innovative space. So we have a chance to actually say, okay, look, we as a community, we want to have decentralized identifiers connected to NFTs. We want to not trust a centralized marketplace. We want to give the power back to the users. So I'm really pushing for that. And I hope that many others in the space are also pushing for it. And and then maybe in a year we'll look back and think, okay, wow, this is something where Cardano is completely unique in all of crypto, essentially.
Yeah, Cardano leading the way. I love it.
Exactly.
Tim, you mentioned some amazing use cases. As you're rolling out your solutions, what do you see as the hurdles to mass adoption, and how is your company attacking those?
Yes, I think this is a very good question, so maybe I can provide 2 comments on this. Number one is like a scientific approach. So there's one topic out there that is called Crossing the Chasm. I don't know whether you ever heard about this book. So the topic is, if we have a product, a technology product, that has the chance to be disruptive, and I know this is the word that is maybe being used too often, but let's just think for a moment that the technology that we are talking about here makes it possible to add the layer of identity and authentication to the internet, like that you can treat the internet like you are logged in. This book, this concept, answers the question regarding the sequence of the target groups that you go through in order to be successful on this topic, and also regarding how ready the product must be that it works. Therefore, we believe that we should start on a blockchain, start with verifiable NFTs, with pools, transactions, DAOs, because we are the early adopters. The complete projects on Cardano should use our technology or something similar that has to do with this, and also the other blockchains to make this work. The other part is that I think sometimes we talk about technology too much. Maybe you think, you know, when you bought your last car, how have you chosen, you know, which car you buy? So it might be brand, size, how many seats, color, horsepower and stuff like this. So I think it's important, if you go this big step like we do with our telecommunication partners, because they have so many customers in every country, it needs to be super easy, super convenient, and you need a benefit from the first transaction. And it needs to be so simple that even our parents can handle this without that we need to help them. So I think usability, design, and financial benefits and all those things are very important that it works.
Great, thank you. And since we're here at the Cardano Summit, I'll ask a softball question to anyone on the panel. So why are you building on Cardano, whether it's decentralized identifier solutions with Cardano's Atala Prism, or more generally, why Cardano? What makes us special? Bruno, go ahead.
Well, actually, to me, I think the first chain who really goes in a direction that they want to prevent fraud, prevent money laundering from the chain, they will be the first and most attractive for further investors, in particular institutional investors, but also always using the example of the next 10% of the population, how to bring them in. And there I think confidence and trust are the key words to grow in there. And I think Cardano, with such an exciting community, is best positioned to play here a very early mover into that area. And to me, that's what makes kind of Cardano unique. It's all you here, and that actually I think is the big value we have here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, maybe. So for me, you know, I came into crypto and blockchain in general through Bitcoin, and I was very drawn to this, you know, solving real problems, solving the problem of monetary transfers across the world, across countries and so on. So it was a little bit frustrating looking at all these blockchains and seeing all the like shitcoins and seeing all the like degen stuff and so on. And I'm really about solving actual problems, onboarding the real world, because I truly believe, you know, blockchain can make the world a better place. It can really, you know, level the playing field. And when I was looking at all the cryptocurrencies, I saw, okay, Cardano is the only one which is actually trying to do that. And I mean, it's spearheaded by IHK, but there are also many projects on Cardano that are actually trying to just solve problems and trying to onboard the real world, like, you know, Book.io and Project Neum and IAMX and so many others in the space. So I think that's very unique, and it's something which has been fostered in this community, and that just makes it extremely attractive to anyone who wants to see blockchains just make the world a better place.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know if either of you two want to go ahead, Tim.
Yes. So maybe I can share the view from a founder, from a startup. So the technology that we have developed is blockchain agnostic, but we started on Cardano for one big reason. So from my eyes, startup, CEO, founder, we get the most valuable support, for example, from the Cardano Foundation. So they help us to connect us to resources, whether these are financial resources, whether these are prospects, so possible partners that can or could use our technology in the physical world, also for projects also building on Cardano. So this support has been very, very valuable for us, and we are just 1 year old. So I think without this support, we would not be so far, and we would not be here. So I think this is great when you want to start building on a blockchain. I have seen no greater support, and we compared about 20 various proof-of-stake ledgers compared to Cardano. So this is, in my eyes, one of the biggest assets that the Cardano community and especially the Cardano Foundation provides to startups.
Sebastian.
Yeah, I'd really like to add 3 more things. I mean, the most obvious thing is obviously, those were 2 times obviously, but it's the Cardano community. I mean, you experienced it during the last 2 days. It was just great to meet everyone, and I'm super excited what we can do together. That's something I never experienced before. So there are so many strong builders and people that are passionate about different topics like SSI or DIDs. And when you're talking to them, you just feel that there's the ability to deliver. That's actually the second thing. It's the ability to deliver. So Cardano has received some criticism that we are not the fastest, that we are probably not implementing all the features that people are crying for. Cardano Foundation, for example, not approaching the right parties to integrate with. But in the end, it always turned out that Cardano was able to deliver. This was true for smart contracts, and it has been true for those updates which went live with the Vasil hard fork. So that's super important. And in the end, it's perseverance, and I'm super convinced that this is one of the best features of Cardano and the Cardano community, at least because if you look at, as IOHK is not on stage at the moment, but if you look at Attila Prism, which probably didn't receive the adoption or level of adoption that they originally planned for the first version, but they still stick to the plan because they just believe in the approach and the technology. So that's what convinces me why everyone should probably build their identity solution on Cardano.
Yeah, that's a great point. In a second, I'm going to ask the panelists if anybody wants to make one final comment in the last minute that we have remaining. I'll remind the audience, unfortunately, we can't take any questions from the audience. Please do find us. We'll be around today if something sparked your interest. One final comment from the panelists. You have 1 minute. Oh, that's maybe too much pressure. Go ahead, Tim. 1 minute.
Yes, my friendly wish would be when you are building on Cardano, when you have a project that is live, please be so kind, reach out to us, tell us about your project, let's do some joint business development and find out how the technology that we provide can support your business model to be more profitable, to start running in various areas. So I kindly ask for you all to kind of reach out to us and that we find a solution how you can also use this technology.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And I'll just add that Proofspace is really excited to be live with the Teleprism, so we're using it. If you want to see a demo of a Teleprism in action, come find me. I will issue you a verifiable credential that is my business card, and we will write to Cardano mainnet, which is very exciting. So I want to thank you all for being such a fantastic audience, for joining us to talk about this important topic of decentralized identifiers, verifiable credentials, self-sovereign identity, Cardano's Atala Prism, which is going to change the world in the way we manage our online identities. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Superb. Thanks to every single one of our panelists, and of course, thanks to Allison for outstanding moderation. It's obvious from the quality of the discussions that there are varying views on the journey, but it seems like we are pretty agreed that on the destination. But the only destination that I know you're all concerned about at the moment is grabbing some coffee, getting a refreshment, catching some fresh air. So we will see you back in here at 11:30. Enjoy your networking, everyone.